حي على الفلاح.
بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم نحمده ونصلي ونسلم على رسوله الكريم. As Uncle Ansari was just speaking about the children, one of the children who grew up with Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam was Anas bin Malik. Anas bin Malik, he says that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he came to Medina whilst I was 10 years of age. The mother of Anas bin Malik was Sulaym. She brought Anas to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he arrived in Medina, she said to him, "This is Anas, a young boy, and he will do your khidmah." So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he embraced Anas and he kissed him. When Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he completed Hijrah and he went to Medina, the city of Medina welcomed Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam with open arms. Everyone rushed to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. They were giving him gifts and they were giving him their glad tidings, and they requested for him to stay at their house. But Sulaym, she also wanted to give a gift to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. But she was very poor. She was not from amongst the wealthy or the well-off people of Medina. So she gifted her son to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam so that he may do her khidmah, so that Anas may do Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam khidmah, and so that Anas may grow up in the company of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, and so that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam could do his tarbiyah and could train him from a very young age. Anas radiallahu anhu, he says that قدم النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم إلى المدينة وأنا 10 سنة، ومات النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم وأنا 20 سنة. Anas radiallahu anhu, he says that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he came to Medina whilst I was 10 years of age, and Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam died whilst I was 20 years of age. So Anas, he spent 10 years in the service of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He spent 10 years doing khidmah for Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam. Anas, he says that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he used to call me Aba Hamza. Hamza comes from the word Hamaza. Hamaza means to have a bitter or a sour taste. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he gave this name to Anas because he would collect roots and herbs that which are of a bitter nature, and that would taste bitter when they were brewed into tea. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he would also joke with Anas ibn Malik. He once said to Anas ibn Malik jokingly, he called him Ya Darul Uloom, O the possessor of 2 ears. Zakariya alayhi Rahmah, he says that everyone possesses 2 ears. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam calling Anas Ya Darul Uloom would mean that he called him that for a special reason. And he says that this reason could be of 2. Either Anas had very large ears, or he had very sharp hearing. The ulama, they say that Anas, he had a very sharp hearing, and he could hear from far. Anas, he also says that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he would associate with us. إن كان النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم يخالطنا حتى يقول لأخ لي صغير يا أبا عمير ما فعل النغير. Anas, he says that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he would associate with us, he would mix with us, and he would joke with us as well. He once said to a small brother of Anas, whose name was Abu Umair, ما فعل النغير. Now, what is a nughair? According to the ulama, a nughair is a white-tailed red pigeon. In Hayatul Hayawan, it is mentioned that a nughair is a nightingale. So this small brother of Anas, he found this animal and he adopted this animal as a pet. And the animal died. The animal had passed away. And this caused grief to Abu Umayr. This caused Abu Umayr to go into a saddened state. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, with the intention of cheering up Abu Umayr, he said to him, "Ma fa'ala al-Nughayr?" What happened to the Nughayr? Now hearing that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam used to joke might be something strange to us, because it is not a side of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that is spoken about often, nor was it something done continuously by Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And there's also the narration of Ibn Abbas, wherein Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, "La tumazih," do not joke. So some of us may even think that it is prohibited to joke. Imam Nawawi alayhi Rahmah, he looks at the two narrations and he gives a jawab for this. He says that the joking that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam he speaks about, in which you should not do, are two: sukhriya and istihza. Sukhriya is joking wherein you debase someone. The purpose of your joking or your intent while joking is to debase someone and ridicule them, make fun of them. And istihza is where your intention is just to make fun of them and to laugh at them, but you do not intend to debase them. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he says that قالوا يا رسول الله إنك تداعبنا قال إني لا أقول إلا حقا. Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, he says that the Sahaba, they asked Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, "Are you joking with us? إنك تداعبنا? Are you joking with us?" So the Sahaba, they asked Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam this because they requested that they be able to document and memorize every part of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's life, down to every fine and minute detail of it. And when Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam gave permission for this, they found it to be strange, because no one would like that someone documents their entire life, nor that someone memorizes their entire life and then they go and talk about it, because every one of us, we commit mistakes, and no one would like that our mistakes be known. But Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he gave them the permission to do such. So they were surprised. So they asked him, "Oh Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, are you joking with us?" So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he said, "No, I do not speak except that which is true." Due to this hadith, the ulama, they say that even when one is joking, he is not allowed to exaggerate such to the extent that he says something that is not true. And he is not allowed to intentionally put lies into that joke as well. One joke of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam that may help us to understand this better, how Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam would joke without exaggeration or joke without adding anything into it, is Hasan al-Basri radiallahu anhu, he narrates that an old woman came to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. The name of this old woman is Zubayr. And she said to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, "Ya Rasulullah, O Messenger of Allah, make dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala so that he may enter me into Jannah." Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he replied and told this woman, Ya Ummi Umayr, "Oh, Ya Ummi Zubayr, O mother of Zubayr, old women do not enter into Jannah." So the old woman, she began to cry and she became very saddened and she started to leave. As she started to leave, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he recited, "Inna ansha'nahunna insha'a." Indeed, we have created those females a fresh creation. فَجَعَلْنَاهُنَّ أَبْكَارًا, and we have made them virgins. عُرُبًا أَتْرَابًا, loving towards their husbands and equal to them in age. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he told Zubayr that old women do not enter into Jannah, and this is true. Allah says we have made them into a new creation and we have made them into virgin women. there will be no old woman in Jannah. They will be equal to their husbands in age, with regards to their husband would be in their prime age and the woman would be in their prime age. So no one would enter into Jannah as old people. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he did not lie, nor did he exaggerate. He simply told Zubair the truth. Anas bin Malik, he reports that a man from the wilderness whose name was Zahir, he used to bring presents to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam from the wilderness. And when Zahir, he intended to leave the city of Medina and go out into the wilderness, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he would bring provisions for him from the city and he would give it to him for his travels. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he once said, Zahir is our wilderness and we are Zahir's city. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he loved Zahir very much, even though Zahir was not a handsome man at all. Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he once approached Zahir while Zahir was selling his goods in the market of Medina. And he walked up behind of him and tucked his arms under the arms of Zahir and covered his eyes like this. Zahir, then he began to say, "Who is this? Who is this? Leave me, leave me." Then in the corner of his eyes, he realized that it was Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam who was standing behind him and covering his eyes. So Zahir, he then leaned back against the chest of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. And he stayed there, because this position was better than any gifts that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam could give to him, and this was better than anything that he could receive in this world. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he then said, "Who would purchase this slave from me?" Zahir, he replied to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and he said, "Ya Rasulullah, if you are to sell me, you will be selling something defective and you will not receive profit from it, nor would you receive any kind of wealth from this sale." Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he then said, "O Zahir, you are not defective in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Rather, in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you are very beautiful. You are very high in rank." The embrace of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam coming to him from the back and covering his eyes and saying that who would purchase this slave, it was out of joke. It was out of being humorous to Zahir, due to Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam love for him. The commentators, they mention that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he found Zahir engrossed in selling merchandise. And out of fear that he was engrossed in selling merchandise and that his mind would slip from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he embraced him and covered his eyes to take him out of thinking about only selling his goods. And Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, him saying that who would purchase this slave? The commentators, they say that it has to be out of joke, because one cannot sell a free man, and Zahir is a free man. And also it was a reminder to Zahir that he is considered as a slave. Anyone is considered as a slave as long as their minds are engrossed in something other than in the dhikr of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, other than the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And then Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he gave him the glad tidings of being high in the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He gave him these glad tidings after Zahir, he broke out of the engrossment of selling goods and only thinking about that, and hence he became closer to the sight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He became closer in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, more beloved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, the joking is such that it is easily to become engrossed in. Imam Nawawi alayhi Rahmah, he says that when one becomes engrossed in joking and he starts to do it excessively, his heart becomes hard and becomes dead from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Likewise, we should try to not engross ourselves in so much joking that we forget the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And if we find someone, or we find ourselves in that state that they are engrossed in joking, so to the extent that they forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we should remind them of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But that does not mean that we should not joke. That does not mean that we should stay away from joking. Because Imam Nabi alayhi rahmah, he goes on to say that when joking is done simply with the intention of making one happy, simply with the intention of pleasing someone and raising their mood, making them happy and making them pleased, and it is done within these guidelines of joking, you do not lie, there is no exaggeration in it, it is not debasing anyone, it is not making a fool out of anyone, and it is not laughing at someone, then it is considered as mustahab. Maulana Ibrahim Allaham, he says that it is sunnah to make someone smile and it is sunnah to joke with someone, as long as they are in the stipulated guidelines and they do not cause one to forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. These are hadith and these jokes of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, they are rare, because Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he barely did it because it would cause his heart to become hard, and it was taken away from the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, doing it constantly. But it was something that Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he had to do, because Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he was of such character that his awe would be felt for months journeying distance. Journeying in months, that distance, his awe will be felt throughout. And if Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he did not joke, and he did not smile, and he did not laugh, then he would not come across as pleasant or welcoming to others. Others would want to be around him, but they would find it hard to be around him. They would find it hard to associate with him and to learn from him. Hence the doors of benefit of learning from Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam and being in his company would be closed. So Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he had to do such. Likewise, as human beings, we also need to joke. We also need to have people around us, because we were created as sociable creatures. We were not created so that we may stay by ourselves and lock ourselves in solitude and we do not laugh and do not smile. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he did not create like us like that. Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, he even smiled, he even laughed, he even joked. He even made himself in such a manner that it would be welcoming towards little children, so that little children would feel that they would desire to be around him. Human beings are such that we need to joke and we need to laugh. So we should not think that we shouldn't joke, because it could make our hearts hard and that we could become too engrossed in it. So may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he give us the ability to practice upon what has been said today. And may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he make us pleasant and welcoming individuals and following the sunnah of Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Wa akhiru da'wana alhamdulillahi rabbil alameen.